I get an opportunity to talk today about the advantage of adversity. And think about that for a minute. We're talking about the advantage of adversity. It's tough. You put advantage and you put adversity together. What I'd like you to do is think about your adversity for a moment. What are you dealing with? What types of adversity do you have going on in your world? Adversity. The root word is adverse. It's an adjective. One definition means contrary to one's own interest. Another definition is preventing development or success. It could be you. It could also be your team. So think about that for a minute. We've talked a lot today about different adversities that we've experienced in the past. We've even talked about some adversity that we might experience in the future. So adversity. Think about that for a minute. What I'd like to do is take you on a journey and tell you a little bit about our story. What I want to do today is I'm going to show you that you can take adversity and use it to your advantage in 3 steps in a very systematic approach. But before I do that, I'd like to share this story. So back in 1999, I was on my way to work, working for AirTran. I get on the on-ramp, I get on the expressway, traveling down I-285 on my way to work. Same expressway I take every day, same one. I'm on, it's fall day, I think, have my windows down. I start to rub my eye because I have something in it. And as I'm going down the expressway, the lanes on the road, they just completely disappeared on me. Now imagine that, lanes just completely disappeared. I thought that was odd, and it is, right? That's extremely odd. Here it is, the lanes disappeared. So I opened my eye back up, magically the lanes came back, so I figured they must be doing some road construction or something must be going on that, they're doing. So I look back in the rearview mirror and there's those lanes. And wow, that's odd. So I tried to recreate that problem, right? So I continue on down the road, and as I'm traveling, I said, okay, I'm gonna do that again. So I closed my eye again, and the lanes disappeared again. Well, that was odd, right? And that certainly would be adverse, right? But I said, I did what any real man would do, right? I did exactly what any real macho man would do. I totally ignored it. I went to work, I went to work, I worked my shift, and as the days and weeks and months went past, though, I did start to notice that I was wearing darker and darker shades, right? So things were pretty difficult to deal with. I didn't know what was going on. I started to wear shades in the building. Right? It was a challenge. So finally, I decided I shouldn't ignore it anymore like any real man. I should probably do something. So I went to an optometrist, and I visited with the optometrist. And at that time, I passed my eye test. You know how you go into, you sit down and you've got the eye chart and you cover one eye. Well, the lighting in the room was okay, so I was able to pass my exam. Confusing to me. I'm having this difficult situation with my eyes, and I don't really know what's going on. But I, continue to work, continue to do things. So I left the optometrist. I went to a neuro-ophthalmologist. The neuro-ophthalmologist tests, the nerves and things like that, and says, I don't see anything. The optometrist didn't see anything. The neuro-ophthalmologist didn't see anything. So I went to a series of doctors. One doctor recommended me to a gentleman by the name of Elliot Burson. He works at Massachusetts Eye and Ear. It's in Boston. And so I went there. I went that day with my parents and my girlfriend at the time. We went to Massachusetts Eye and Ear, and it's a grueling day. The first thing they did was they dilated my eyes. I'm sure some of you have had that done. Well, this was an 8-hour day, so I got dilated at least 4 times that day. They connected contact lenses to my eyes that had these cords that were connected to machines, and they measured how my eyes would respond to light. And so they shine a big bright light in, see how the nerves will respond, and then they do real quick flashes. And then they tell you, this is amazing. Doctors say something strange. You put a contact lens in my eye that's bigger than any contact lens I've seen. You got a wire attached to it. They put it in your eye and they say, hey, don't blink. How in the world can I do that? But, so I went throughout the day, again, series of tests, but at the end of the day, I got some really interesting news. Dr. Burson sat me down with my parents, my girlfriend at the time, and says, hey, we've diagnosed you with macular degeneration with cone involvement. I had no idea what that meant. Right? I'm like, okay, cool. So what are we gonna do? Do I need glasses? What are we going to do? Well, it's degenerative, he says, and that means that this is something that could lead to blindness. So here I am sitting in Dr. Burson's office trying to understand what is this that's going on. On the screen, I have a picture of a macula that has rod and cone deficiency. I didn't get an opportunity to have a picture of my own, so I found this one. On the left-hand side is a healthy eye, a healthy macula. On the right-hand side is one that isn't. And if you're able to see it on the screen, right there in the middle, you see these little blotches. There's little blotches. Those are the rods and cones that are deficient. Your rods and cones are your light-sensing cells. Those are the cells that determine how you deal with night vision. Those are the rods and cones are the cells that determine how you deal with sun and every other type of lighting situation and colors and things like that. So there I was in Dr. Burson's office getting this news. I think you all would agree with me, that's adverse, right? That is adversity, right? That is something that is contrary to my interest and certainly could prevent my development and my success, right? So there I was. So what do I do next? Well, what I'm going to do now during this talk is I'm going to share with you that I approach adversity in 3 simple steps. And I'd like to introduce you to a couple of people that have helped me along the way and the phrases that they use that have resonated with me. Up first is a good friend of mine. His name is Maurice Robinson. He's pictured there on the screen. And if we look like we've had a little too much to drink, it's because we have. We were at a dinner party earlier this year. Maurice is the guy right in the middle, and on the other side is a good friend of mine. His name is Tony. We've been friends since grade school. But what resonates with me are the words that Maurice uses. Now, Maurice and I talked after this, this trip to Boston. So we're having a conversation. We're having some dialogue, and he says, "Yeah, man, I know that's tough." He says, "But you know what, James? It is what it is. Hey, man, it is what it is." I said, "What? Dude, you have a little more sympathy or something like that." But it's all right. His words resonated with me, and here's the reason why. So when I think about adversity, the first thing I think is it is what it is. This is a phrase that you all have probably used. You may have even used it today at some point, right? It sort of seems ambiguous, but here's how I think about it. When you accept adversity for what it is, you certainly take the first step, which is release the victimization in adversity, and you embrace the potentiality. You stop asking questions like, why did this happen to me? You stop asking questions like, what did I do to deserve this? I'll try this one out on you all for leadership. You stop asking the question of, why did headquarters make that decision? Those are the, and instead you start asking questions that lead to positive outcomes like, what can I do so that this situation and these set of circumstances are no longer contrary to my interest or success? And for your team, you start asking questions like, what can I do to make sure that I can continue to help my team develop and be successful and so that things aren't contrary to their interest? So that's how I approached it. Now, what that meant for me was I needed to figure out, what do I need to do next? I have this situation. I went through a period of depression. I felt like I didn't know what was going on. I asked myself those questions. Why did this happen to me? I have never found an answer, right? Other than the fact that, man upstairs says we'll never give you more than you can handle. That was really it. But I needed to figure out how to deal with this. So what I thought about, was something that I'd heard my mom say, and I'd like to introduce you to her and her phrase. So this is a picture of Mom. She's pictured there with several of her siblings. Yes, several of her siblings. And oh, by the way, 4 of them are missing. Yes, I get that same reaction. They worry about my grandmother, and I was just like, oh my God. So my grandmother had 18 kids. This is my mom pictured there. That's her cute little face. Mom simply says, you can't do it alone, right? And I think she gets that phrase from her upbringing, right? There wasn't a lot they could do alone. There were 18 of them, right? So she couldn't do much by herself. They had to go places together. They had to cook together. They had to go out in the field together. They had to do everything together. But let's analyze Mom's words for a moment. You can't do it alone. Gary talked about at the beginning of the day, it's teamwork. What do you do? How do you think about who you surround yourself with? I mentioned to you that my parents and my girlfriend were with me at the time. Well, they weren't impacted by vision loss, but I was. They couldn't really help me. They were there for moral support, but they couldn't really help me understand what I needed to do, how I needed to get along, what are the things that I needed to do so that I'm better off and more independent. So think about that for a second. So what did I do? I started to research. I started to get on the internet. I wanted to find out who was succeeding with vision loss because I wanted to succeed with vision loss. And so I was doing the research. I ended up at this place called Center for the Visually Impaired Atlanta. And Center for the Visually Impaired Atlanta, they deal with all types of vision issues, and they deal with all ages. So they've got this Begin program where they've got very small children, 2 years old, that are learning how to walk, and they're walking with canes and they're totally blind. And they also deal with folks that are elderly, maybe early onset diabetes, different things that impact vision loss in older adults. So full gamut at Center for the Visually Impaired, from up here to the young. Well, it was there that I realized that, you know what? There are tools, there's techniques, there are things out there that can help me work through these situations. And so the Center for the Visually Impaired was part of my team. I went there on a regular basis, so much so that I ended up as a board member for them. And I was there until the time that I moved to Dallas to come here and work for Southwest Airlines full time and do the things that we're doing here. So that's mom. So you can't do it alone. No matter what it is, any type of adversity, whatever the challenge is, you can't do it alone. You could cut your finger. You could put a Band-Aid on it. You could probably do that by yourself, but somebody invented that Band-Aid and somebody told you how to take care of that finger at some point. So there's no adversity or no challenge you could do by yourself. Last one I'd like to introduce you to is my brother. My brother's Glenn. That's him pictured there. He thinks he's the cooler brother. And he is, he really is. But this is a text message that he sent to me on Father's Day, and it reads, "Happy Father's Day, cherish it." And there's a tagline on there that says, "Just do it." And "just do it" is the last phrase that I like to share with you all. Now, "just do it," you all have heard it, you've seen it, it's Nike's. It's not mine, it's Nike, it's not my brother's, it's Nike's. They had a tough, fierce ad campaign. They wanted to compete with Adidas in the fitness world. So they had a very tough ad campaign, and they had two objectives. I did research on this. They had two objectives with this campaign. Number one was we wanted it to be universal. Number two is we wanted it to be intensely personal. That was their goal, and that was it. Those were the two objectives with the phrase, "just do it." So I think about "just do it" in that way. Here you are, faced with a challenge. You have gotten past the victimization of it. You have learned and worked with your team, whoever that team is around you, and you've determined, how do I just do it? So for me, it was taking the tools and techniques, the learned behavior, everything that I learned from folks who are successful with vision loss. What are they doing? And put it into action. Just do it. And that's really it. Those are the three things. It is what it is. You can't do it alone. And just do it. I don't only apply it to my personal life. I apply it to, I apply it at work as well. Give you another story. Back in the fall of 2010, I was Sunday afternoon. I was at home. I can't remember if we were quite into the season yet. I'm a big football fan. We were at home. My wife and I were sitting in the den. I get a phone call. I look at the phone, and it's my boss at the time. And the phone rings, and I turn to my wife, and I said, it's my boss calling. And she looks at me. She's like, "Okay." But baby, he never calls. Like, I don't know what he's calling for. And, like any wife, and my wife is awesome. She's so perfect for me because you know what she said? "Answer the phone." I said, "Okay." So I answered it. And the conversation went something like this. "Hey, James, how you doing?" "Great. How about you?" "Doing good. Need you in the office first thing tomorrow morning." I said, "Okay. Is there anything I need to prepare for? Is there anything I need to know? And what time do you need me?" He said, "About 6 o'clock in the morning." "Well, 6 o'clock?" But like the good leader that I am, I said, No problem, boss. I'll be there. And I did. Walked into the office at 6 o'clock, didn't know what was going on. Let me back up a little bit. So as I hang up the phone with him, my phone rings again, and it's one of my fellow managers, and she says, hey, did you just get a phone call? I said, yeah, I did. She said, do you know what's going on? Why do we have to be in the office at 6 o'clock? I said, I have no idea. I have no clue. She said, well, your office is right next to his. Why don't you know? Well, I just don't know. So I hang up the phone with her, and my phone rings again. Same question. Do you know what's going on? No, I don't. If you find out something, call me back and let me know. She said the same thing to me. If you find out, call me, because we exchanged. So, and my phone continued to ring throughout the day because this was happening to all the managers around the company. So I'm sure by now you all figured out when I walked in at 6 o'clock that next morning, sat down, had a conference call, got a piece of paper pushed across my desk and said, here are some talking points. You need to know that Southwest and AirTran have agreed to an acquisition. Oh, cool. I think. I didn't know what that meant. I thought about it for a second, and I'm like, man, this is an adverse situation because I don't know what's going to go on here. But honestly, we had a job to do that day. We had to make the announcement. We had to go out there and sell the deal, so to speak. And I really didn't know what I was doing because I worked for ValueJet in the early to mid 90s. And so a lot of what we were doing kind of modeled after Southwest, which was great. So that's what I knew. I also knew, thank you, Kevin Crone, that Southwest had some cool commercials on NFL games. That's the other thing I knew. But lo and behold, worked out well. But the first thing I did was thought about Maurice and his statement, it is what it is. So, okay, so it is what it is. I've got to go out. We've got to start preaching the message, talking to folks about what it is we need to do. And that's what we do as leaders. We take that message, we take those talking points, we go out there and we accept it for what it is, and we go out there and we do it. I spoke to Maurice later that night. He said, hey, man, I heard on the news that, y'all are getting with Southwest. I said, yeah, man. I said, but I don't know what that means. You know what he said, right? He goes, man, it is what it is. Okay. All right, got you. I get it. It is what it is. So fast forward, though. So you can't do it alone. As Jeff mentioned, I had the opportunity early in 2012 to join the Southwest team and work on the transition and the consolidation and all the transition agreements, all the things that we needed to do to put AirTran reservations together with Southwest Customer Support and Services. And that was an exciting time. Terry Brown, somewhere in the room, she said, hey, we've made a decision that we're probably going to, consolidate the AirTran centers into one call center. We're going to build a new one in a facility that AirTran has. And, I need you to lead that effort. Okay. So I knew then, she asked me, but I couldn't do it alone, right? Mom said it. I needed to then figure out who's the team that we need to put around us. We had teams of facilities. We had teams from labor. We had teams from the people department. We had teams within CS&S. We probably had about 2 or 3 teams within CS&S to help put these two together. And that was our team. I'm proud to say that we wrapped up the CS&S integration in the end of 2013, which was 1 full year ahead of the full AirTran acquisition. And a lot of the folks that participated in that are in the room, and I thank you for that. It was great for us. And the last thing, I think about, same thing with the AirTran, just do it, is once we made those decisions and what we needed to do before we got to the end of 2013, the question was, how do you go out there and do it? And so for us, it was all about execution. I figured out that I needed to get over it, right? I needed to, figure out how I could make it work. We put our team together, and so we're out there doing the things we needed to do to make the integration happen for our department. And so that's it. Those are the 3 things. I'll tell you again. It is what it is. Adversity is what adversity is. You can't do adversity alone. And when you go through the first 2, you just got to do your adversity. That is what it is. So I tell the story in hopes to help you. I'm here today because of those three things. I had the opportunity to stand here before you as a member of the Senior Management Committee for Southwest Airlines. Fantastic for me. I love it. Back in 2000, when I went to Boston and Massachusetts Ioneer, I mentioned I had my girlfriend with me. Well, that's my wife now. We celebrated 13 years on August 2nd of wedding bliss. And I've got, thank you. Thank you very much. We've got two amazing kids. They're pictured there, Jay and Skylar. This is my son's way of doing a family selfie. We were at our Chicago trip. He's a phenomenal kid. And I still deal with vision loss today. I've got tools that I use. I've got magnification programs on my computer. I use an electronic magnifier, and Apple has a lot of accessibility built into their iPhone and iPad, and I use those things religiously. I don't go anywhere without them. But that's me, right? So that's my story. But I tell you this more for you than for me, because as I mentioned, there's an advantage to adversity. So what does that mean, James? What are you saying when you say the advantage of adversity? Here's what I'm saying. It's like muscle memory. I mentioned my son, he plays basketball. And his coach is a really good coach. His select coach, his high school coach, verdict's still out. So his select coach is a really good coach. But he teaches, he talks about shooting free throws. And he talks about muscle memory. The more you do it, the better off you are. The higher your percentage is when you practice it, the better off you are when it's time to put it into the game. That's what I'm saying to you. Are you ready? I asked you to think about that adversity earlier. Are you ready to think about getting past the emotional piece of it, whatever that adversity is, not becoming a victim, but figuring out a positive way to approach that adversity? Are you ready to do that? Are you ready to think about what's that team you want to have around you? Who do you want on your team? Who do you want to help you attack that adversity? And then lastly, are you prepared to just do it? So here's what I'm saying, folks. When it comes to adversity, the way you make it work to your advantage is you do it over and over. You work through the resilience, it's your endurance. Now, as leaders, you're going to be faced with adversity. We all have in the past, and we all will in the future. Leadership Summit is a way for us to learn more about it, a way for us to, learn different things about leadership. Here's what I'm saying to you. The more you practice it, the better off you'll be. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I consider the advantage of adversity. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Thank you.